Hello friends, Ken here. We have a basic tutorial today for you guys, and it's on Adobe Premiere Pro. So I'm just going to teach you guys a couple of tricks that I use to make my videos, do little things like moving pictures and videos around, how to stay consistent with them, and overall have a much easier time than I did when I was first doing this stuff. Now I'm just adjusting some of my windows and getting everything the way I like. I like having a big preview window. So let's take a look at the first technique I'm going to show you, which is how to make pictures follow something. So let's say I want to make this Illuminati triangle follow my character on the screen. After we place the object, we're going to lock the video and the audio files just so we don't mess anything up on accident. This technique isn't the most accurate way to move an image, but it'll get an item from point A to point B as long as you're moving in a relatively straight line. So let's click the Effects tab. We're going to click on our image. Then we want to click the drop down menu for motion. So now we want to click this circle for position. This is going to create a keyframe for the item. And we're just going to change the scale from 100 to 10. And it's not necessary to create a keyframe for this because we're not planning on making the object change size over time. So we're going to keep it consistently at 10 throughout the entire movement. The keyframe allows us to tell the program that we want this object at this position at this time in the video. So that means at roughly the 5-second mark, I want my image to be roughly here in comparison to the rest of the video, basically on top of my character. So now we're going to want to move it along this path right here. Now in this example, it's not going to look pretty, but we're assuming that the camera centers around the character that we're trying to move, so we don't have to move the image until roughly at this point here. So you'll play your video when you get to that frame where your character decides to verge off. Just click the image and you move it over. It's simple as that. So now we're going to replay the footage and show you what that would look like. Now remember, it's only when you have something centered and following on your screen that you don't really need to do it any other way than this right here. But if you want more precision and you're a perfectionist like me, then I'll show you the better way of doing it, although it takes way more time, and that's what I call the Claymation Follow. Now we're going to start off the same way. We're going to put the image over our character, but instead of moving it just once or twice, we're going to move it a lot. And I mean a lot, like a crap ton of a lot, because we're going to go frame by frame and adjust the image ever so slightly. And we're going to do this multiple times. Now I'm going to speed up the video or else we'll be here for like 20 minutes doing this. But you can see how many movements there are by each individual dot and how much time this can essentially take to make something move. But if you want precision and you want the image to follow as close as possible as you can to whatever it is you're trying to follow, I think this is the best way to do it, although it is the most time consuming. So here we're going to play back the video so you can see what it's like. But if you're lazy like me and you want to try to make something move really quick, I'll show you how I do the quick follow. Because it's all quick and stuff, quick. So let's adjust the scale again, and I've clicked the keyframe for it at this time because I'm going to show you something after we do this. So then find the point of the video that you want to start the movement, move the image over your character or whatever it is you're trying to make it follow. We're going to start the position keyframe here. Now we're going to scroll ahead, see how he's moving in a roughly straight line. We're just going to find the frame where we want the image to stop at when we move it, which was roughly about where I froze the frame earlier, right about there. And you could also use the frame movement arrows next to the play button just to get more precise and get it exactly where you want. So now that we found the perfect frame, we're just going to drag the image over here. But you may notice that Udir continues to move, but he's going to change his trajectory upwards now. That means we also have to change the vector of the image, so it continues to follow him in a relatively straight path. So let's find the perfect frame, because I am a perfectionist and I'm very anal about finding just the right frame to do this. And we'll use this one here, because he's about to drop the flame on some minions, and we know he's not going to move for a couple more frames after this. So he's going to do his little bird thing, and then he's going to start moving along that path there. But you see how the camera switched, so we're going to have to get ready to compensate for that change. So now let's find the perfect frame to where the image switches over to the next camera view, which is roughly about here. So now we're going to go back and then we're going to move the image just slightly to match the last character movement before the frame switches over, which starts right about here. So we'll move it slightly to match the character's position. Now we're going to cut the image right at where that frame is at. The reason we cut it here is because we know at the next frame, the image is going to switch. So now this is its own standalone item, and we can do whatever we want with it after the next frame. We're essentially going to want to reposition this image to match where the character is going to be at in this next frame, which is a little bit to the right. Now I meant to extend the image at first, but I slightly moved it so there's a little bit of a black spot in between the frames, but you won't be able to see it once we play just because it's so quick. So now we'll move the image over here, and we would normally set a keyframe so we can continue movement along a different path, but as you will see, the camera follows the character perfectly fine, so we don't have to mess with that too much. So let's play that back and see how this all looks at the end. You see, it isn't the worst way to make things fall, it isn't the best as well, but you could always go in there and tweak it here and there to match certain specific movements better. So going back to what I mentioned earlier, we're going to show you how to make stuff grow or shrink, whichever one you prefer. Now set the starting keyframe, and we're going to move it to the end of the image. We're going to back up one frame just to get the image back into the picture. Set the last keyframe, and we're going to change the scale to 100. And this is what it's going to look like. So like what I was trying to do earlier, we wanted to extend the image. You can make the picture linger on the screen longer, and it's going to look like this. You could also control the rate of which something grows or shrinks. Just move the keyframe further away to make it grow slower, or you can move it closer to the original keyframe to make it grow faster. Just remember, the image will continue to stay on the screen until it's ready to leave, or you make it leave. It's up to you. Now next is a technique which is known as a marquee, or moving stuff across your screen. You could do this with words. Most of the time it's done with words, but we're going to use this image here for the lack of a better image. So you could adjust the size as well from the corner of the boxes if you double click your image. So I don't like doing that so much because I like being very precise and keeping everything within the similar scale, so I use the numbers. We're going to start our position key point here, and we're going to go to roughly the end of the image, back up one frame, and we're going to place the image where we want it to end up after it's done moving, which is across the screen. You could do this with words like I did with the little transition, and once you play it back, here's what it looks like. Now you may start to notice that these are all essentially the same as the original technique of moving an image. It just all depends on where you're trying to move it to create that illusion of a certain kind of movement that we're trying to sell. So I'm going to show you the same technique as we use in the growing frame. We're going to move the ending keyframe closer to the starting keyframe, which is going to make our image move across the screen much faster, as you'll see here. So let's say that's not fast enough for you. You can move it even closer and you can see it just fly across the screen. Now we reset the ending keyframe. We can make it move really slow by extending the image further out to wherever we want, and then moving the keyframe to match the end of that image. And you can play it here, and it's going to take its sweet time. So now that you know how to move things and make things grow, you probably figured you could just combine a bunch of things together and do multiple effects. So let's set the starting keyframe for position and scale, and ending keyframe for same thing. We're going to remember to back up one frame so we can get the image back into view. Now that we're on the last keyframe, we're going to move the image to its ending point, and we're going to change the scale of it to whatever we want. In this instance, I'm going to change it back to 100 from 50, and it's going to grow as it moves across the screen. So maybe you didn't like the way that looked, because it looked like it was kind of awkward in its movement. So I'm sure you noticed that the center of the image is a bigger dot, and it shows you the path of its movement. Now, we know it's going to stay centered on that image no matter where it moves, even as it continues to grow. So it might look kind of weird at first because it's kind of centering at the center of the image, I guess, as it's growing. So we're going to essentially just move it up slightly towards the end, see here, and then that way throw it off the screen so it looks a little better when it moves across this. At least to me it looks a little bit better, because I like to see stuff kind of growing upwards instead of zooming essentially. So if you haven't figured by now, borrowing from the previous techniques, you can make a video follow instead of an image. It's exactly the same way for the most part. I'm just going to have some quick examples for you here. Drop the video file into your timeline, double click the video on the screen. You can adjust its size, you can move its position, same exact thing as using an image, except it's just a video that's following a certain character. So now that we have our starting point, we're going to pick our ending point and just do a quick follow to show you what that all looks like. And if you haven't already figured, you can use the arrows to just transverse between keyframes. And here's what it looks like with more movement keyframes. So here's a trick that I use to make things appear that it's zooming, and it's using the scaling, growing technique that I showed you guys earlier. But this time, we want to zoom into a live moving video feed. So we're going to find a certain point in our video, let's say right here, where the text starts to appear that I want to zoom in on. So we're going to cut the video here. Next, we're going to click the video, press Ctrl+C, make a copy of it, and you can press Ctrl+V to paste it afterwards. Whether you use shortcuts or not, doesn't really matter, as long as you have the option to paste whatever video you just made. Lock the video file, and then that allows us to delete the audio without deleting the video, and you know how it all works. So you move it up top to the second line, that way you can preview it and make sure everything kind of matches up and syncs. You get the idea. So what I did there was I moved the play bar to where I originally made the cut. I made a marker so I knew exactly where the item was. Doing the same thing again, locking the video, deleting the audio, so we don't have too much clashing audio. And move the video back up, line it up with the marker, and you can play it. As long as everything looks pretty seamless, you're good to go for the most part. So let's lock our original video and audio so we don't mess anything up again on accident. Let's set our starting keyframes for position and scale again, and let's say I want to zoom into this line of text right here. So nothing new here, we're just going to move the cursor to the end of the video clip instead of it being an image this time, and we're going to set our keyframes. Of course, back up one frame so you can see stuff. Set the keyframes for scale and position, and we're going to change the scale to 1000. So now we see it roughly zoomed in somewhere in the center of the video. I'm going to speed this up as we find exactly where the clip is. It takes some time. So here we are. This is what we want to zoom into. I'm going to center it exactly the way I like it on the text. And I'm going to show you guys what that all looks like. So we're leaning a bit ahead here, but a quick tip is you can add a transition to the end of your zooming video to make things kind of fade back. You do that by right-clicking the end of the clip and applying the default transition, and you can see what that looks like here. Now this all has the same properties as an image, so you could also extend the clip to have the video linger on longer if you have more footage, of course. So I'm just going to quickly go over transitions and some of the things that you can do for your video. It's going to be pretty short, but it's not really that complicated. So let's throw in our video clip here, and we're just going to make some cuts wherever for the most part. Now obviously, I tried this, and when you transition a video into the same following clip where there's nothing that changes, it doesn't look like anything. So you're gonna have to get rid of that centerpiece and apply that end part that we cut and add that transition here to where it dissolves into the next frame. Now I've figured out a really easy way to change transitions on the fly. So you know, when you go into effects, you're just gonna have to right click a transition, set it as your default, right click the end of your image, apply transition, then go back and change it. But I guess it makes it easier to apply the same transition throughout your entire video. So we're going to take a quick look at the audio transitions. I use the constant gain because it lets your audio fade into one another, and you apply it the same way as a video transition. Just right click it at the end and apply default transition, and you can mess around with there and figure out which one you like the most. Well, that's it for my starting tips on how to use Adobe Premiere Pro. If there's anything that you guys have discovered you could help me with, don't be afraid to let me know. I'd always want to get better. Been using it for about a month and I'm trying to learn more things. So if you like what you saw, just leave a like, subscribe, or comment on anything in the video that you would like to comment on, and I'll be sure to get back at you guys. And as always, thank you for watching.